Hey guys, how's it going? Jen here from Echo Art House. First off, I want to apologize. I know it's been a while since I've put out any videos. There's been a lot of stuff going on. We just bought a house, moved, spent some time with family, and you know, life happens, and then some stuff came up. I know I said I was going to get another glass dip pen, probably J. Urban or Rohrer and Klinger, and do another review on that. And it's been crazy, so I forgot. So I'll have to do that at a later date. Today I want to talk to you guys about the M-gram gouache paints that I picked up, but more specifically, there's a color chart that I made that I want to share with you guys, and I'm going to get into why it's a good idea to make a color chart, and you know, some things about color theory for anyone out there that's maybe thinking about painting or hasn't started yet or something like that. So if you know all that stuff, bear with me. I'll get to the color chart and everything. And that's it. I hope you guys get some good information out of this. All right. Okay, so I'm going to start with the color wheel. This is pretty basic stuff. Most of you guys out there watching this probably already know, but just in case, you know, there's someone that's thinking about picking up painting, it doesn't hurt to do a quick rundown, start from the beginning. So this will all come into play when I explain why the color chart is a good idea. So first you've got your primary colors, the yellow, red, and blue, and you mix those to get your secondary colors, which are orange, green, and blue-violet. And then you have, of course, your tertiary colors. So when you mix your primary and secondary, that's how you get your tertiary. So red, orange, and yellow or orange, yellow, yellow, green, blue, violet, and red, violet. Again, you know, I'm explaining this because it does come into play with the color chart and why it's a good idea. So I'm going to show you the color chart that I made. This is upside down, so it's taken me a minute so you guys can see it right side up. Got to finagle it around here a little bit. This is the color chart. I purchased M-gram gouache paints, and I don't really usually do this. I made a small one for my watercolors, which I'll show you here in a minute. But I guess I'm going to give you a rundown and explain how I did this first. So I've got all the colors, and I have the exact same colors on the top as I do on the side. So I've got titanium white, cadmium yellow light, cadmium yellow, cadmium red, pyrrole red, quinacridone rose, quinacridone violet, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, Prussian blue, phthalo green, sap green, yellow ochre, raw sienna, burnt umber, and lamp black. And the colors, again, are listed in the exact same order, except this time going vertically from top to bottom. So what I did was I started with a titanium white, and on the top row for titanium white, I just painted a swatch of titanium white in each box all the way down. And I did that for every single color. I did the same thing with cadmium yellow. I painted a little square of cadmium yellow all the way down, etc., until you get to the end. And then I went back for the horizontal rows, and I started with the top. So cadmium or titanium white, obviously, you know, you don't need to do again. But the thing about gouache paints is you don't have to mix all of your colors on a palette if you don't want to. Gouache paint re-wets, and so you can blend colors. And this reason in itself is just a great idea to do a color chart. I was able to, with these gouache paints, mix all the colors right here on this chart, which means I didn't have to waste any paint. It took a little bit longer, probably. This took me quite a while to do, but it's worth it. So anyhow, then I went back, and for the horizontal rows, I just went all the way across. So with this, starting with the titanium white, I went over and I blended some titanium white into the cadmium yellow, and then titanium white into cadmium, cadmium yellow light, and then again for the cadmium yellow, and then again for the cadmium red, etc., until I get all the way across. And I did that then for each color. So for the next row, cadmium yellow light, again, I blended some into the white here, This is just the regular cadmium yellow, or the cadmium yellow light I was using, I'm sorry. The regular cadmium yellow, cadmium red, etc. I did this for each of the colors all the way down. And then after that, I went back on top and I tinted the colors some more. And a tint is when you add white to a color. That's called a tint. When you add black to a color, that's called a shade. So I went back, and for half of each of these squares, after I got completely finished, I added some more white. So here's the tint for cadmium yellow light, cadmium red, etc. And I did that for all of them except for the colors straight out of the tube. So I have a set of 16 colors plus black and white. So you can see these boxes going diagonally. The white, cad light, cad yellow, cad red, pyrrole red, etc. all the way down. I just left those as is so that I know what they look like straight out of the tube. And then for the bottom, I did the same thing for the lamp black, just like I did all the way down this side. But the reason that it's a good idea to have all your rows of colors on each side instead of just, you know, mixing one variation of colors and adding the tint and all of that stuff is because you get a lot more color variation and you can see what you can do with the colors. For example, like titanium or titanium white and pyrrole red. I did, you know, in this initial square, before I went back over and put a tint on it, I mixed the titanium white with the pyrrole red, which brings me from this color right here, the pyrrole red, to this color here. And I mixed it again down here, or this is a, yeah, pyrrole red is this one, sorry. I did the same thing down here. And this is right here, pyrrole red mixed with titanium white again. But the difference is that first, obviously, when I started this chart, I started with this vertical row and painted the same color all the way down. Well, then I went back and started with the horizontal row and mixed and blended the colors again all the way across. But all of these rows going horizontally, when I went back to blend the colors, they have more of the color in them that is in the horizontal row. So, for example, this had the cadmium red was laid down first, and then I went back and I blended titanium white into it, which brought me this. So when I got to this row down here, and I did the cadmium red, the white was on there first, and then I went back and blended the red into it. And so whichever color I was blending on top, I added more of that color. So these ones, all the way across, have more white in them. And these ones all the way across have more red in them. So you get a little bit of a different color variation. So you can get an idea of, okay, here's a couple of different tints of what the color will look like with more white mixed into it, etc. Went over the color wheel so you know that your primary red, yellow, blue mixed with your secondary makes your tertiary colors. But different colors of the pigment can be brought out when you're mixing them. For example, let's see, I'm trying to find one right here. There's a couple colors that I mixed, and then when I tinted them, the colors came out different than I expected. So right here, this burnt sienna, when I mixed this burnt sienna with this cobalt blue up here and brought me to here, this brings me to this really pretty dark rich brown. But when I tinted it with the white, it came out to be more of a gray, which I wasn't expecting. And the reason for that is the different pigments and different colors just have different strength, I guess, to their properties. So you can mix a color and say, well, if I just lighten this up with white, I'm going to get, you know, the exact same color but a lighter shade, but that doesn't always happen. Another reason that it's really good to have a color chart is so that you can see how to get richer colors. For example, I've got a little chart here that I made. It was an assignment for one of my color classes. But if you take your primary colors and you mix them, let me autofocus real quick and pull a little more light in here so you can see better. You would think, okay, well, you know, I'm just going to mix green with black to get a darker green, or green with white to get a lighter green. But you don't always get colors, I guess, that are as bold. So if you mix primary and secondary colors, like this blue and this orange, you come up with different colors. Like you come up, this is starting from the top going to the bottom, being more orange, and eventually as you go down, less orange being mixed in with the blue. But you see you've got this really beautiful kind of like almost like a golden brown olive color from mixing blue into orange. You go next down and you know you've got your next shade of green and so on until you go all the way down to blue. So there's quite a bit of difference in color if you mix your blue and orange to get a green, as opposed to, let me show you, I've got another page here, as opposed to if you're doing tints and shades. This is another one that I made of where you've got your tints and shades. And you can see right here, here's green. This is kind of mixed up. I've got this bottom one, and it was supposed to be switched with this one, but it was a late night that night. So anyhow, you've got this green here, and the one in the middle should be the first. So that's the first, you know, step that you'd get with shading it with just a touch of black. And then you go to the next step, which is more black added, and then the last step, which is the most black. But if you look at the green, it's not quite as bold, and I don't know if you guys can see this or not. I'm trying, but the light's being kind of a pain in the butt right now. Here we go. So if you look at the green, like this one right here, where you've mixed your black and shaded it to get this color green, it's not quite as rich and as deep as if you would have taken your orange and mixed it in with your blue. I'm trying to, again, trying to figure out the lighting here, but if you see these green colors right here, they're much bolder. And you may not always want to do that. There's times where you need, you know, a color to be dark and maybe a little dull to grade, but then there are times you want those rich, bold colors. Which kind of brings me to your color palette. You don't need all of these colors. I just kind of fell in love with the colors and wanted them. And I've mixed enough colors that I have a good idea here and there what to mix, what color to get, but you know, occasionally I still forget and I mix the wrong red with the wrong yellow, or the wrong blue with the wrong yellow, and I don't quite get the color that I'm looking for. So that really helps to save paint when doing this. But so really, like I was saying, you don't need all of these colors. You can do plenty with a limited palette, especially if you're getting artist grade paints and materials. Well, I guess I should mention this before I go back to the limited palette. But okay, so if you're just thinking about getting started and you're producing paintings and work that you want to sell, or something like that, the grade of materials that you're using is really, really important. I cannot stress this enough. There's tons of paints that you can buy at Hobby Lobby or Walmart or whatever the case, but most of them are not Lightfast. There is a couple of different ratings and systems for Lightfastness. There's your ATSDM, I think, where the ratings go from 1 being the highest rating, 3 being the lowest, and then there's the blue wool scale, which goes up to, I think, 7 or 8, and the blue wool scale is kind of backwards, where the higher number is the best rating and the lower number is the lowest. So what these Lightfast ratings indicate are how long your colors will remain unchanged once you painted them. If you've ever set a piece of construction paper or, you know, a flyer or whatever on your desk and under the window light or whatever, you leave it out, you see after a while that the colors have faded really badly. So that's what these Lightfast ratings are for. They tell you how good the pigments are, essentially. So one, again, ATSDM, I believe, being the highest, indicates, you know, X many of years before the color starts to fade, which is really, really important if you're selling your work, because you don't want to build a bad reputation for yourself. You know, avoid some of the like cheap art stuff. And I know art materials are really expensive, which brings me to a limited palette. You can get very few colors and make amazing color combinations without spending a ridiculous amount of money in purchasing all the colors that are out there. So generally, it's a good idea to have 2 yellows, 1 cool yellow, 1 warm yellow, 2 blues at least, a cool and a warm blue, and again 2 reds, a cool and a warm red. So your cool yellows would be like your cadmium yellow light right here, or a yellow called Hansa yellow. Your warm yellow would be your regular cadmium yellow. Let's see, your cool blues would be, let's see, right here, phthalo blue and cobalt blue. No, wait, that's ultramarine blue, I'm sorry. Phthalo blue and cobalt blue. And your warm blue would be ultramarine blue. For reds, you have quinacridone red, which is a cool red. And I didn't get it, I got quinacridone rose. It's close enough to red for me. Does the job. And cadmium red, which is a warm red. And the reason that you want to get a warm and a cool of each is because you get different color combinations. And then you can get a white for tinting and a black if you want for shading. And then, you know, a color like a burnt umber, you know, can be a good idea too. But if you look at the colors, again, this is why a color chart is so helpful. Sometimes you can't tell, you know, quite as much with some colors what's a warm and what's a cool. For example, here I've mixed the burnt umber with cadmium yellow light, and then the top half is a tint, and I've mixed the second row of burnt umber with regular cadmium yellow, which is your warm color. So here between these two, you know, you can't see very much of a difference. But when you go back and you look at your greens, or your blues especially, you can see a pretty big difference. If you look over here at your phthalo blue, where I've got it mixed with the cadmium yellow light, and again tinted, and the phthalo blue mixed with the cadmium yellow, there's a pretty obvious difference, to me anyways, in between the two colors. But anyhow, you get the idea. It's the same with when you're trying to mix purples and violets and everything of that nature. And so, like I said, you know, a limited palette isn't, it's a really good idea for somebody that's looking for Lightfast materials, so you don't have to worry about, you know, getting a bad reputation. Not just that, but if you spend hours and hours on a painting, you don't want to put in all that hard work and then see your colors fade. So, you know, your color chart doesn't always have to be this meticulous. I have one that I made for watercolors, which is pretty simple. Okay, so I did these little color swatches, which I'll just hold up for you because the lighting's being kind of weird. But all I did with the watercolors is I just painted these little squares with the colors I have, and I named them, or in some cases circles. And I started with, you know, the most opaque version of watercolor down to the most watered down, just so I could see, you know, what they do and how they look, so I know how strong the colors are. And these are Sennelier. They're amazingly brilliant. And the color chart that I did for this is not anywhere near as complicated. This is pretty dark because I didn't really feel the need to do washes or anything like that. I just want to see how the color would interact. So all I did was I got colors and I mixed them, you know, nothing fancy, and then I just wrote off to the side what colors I was using. So it's nothing fancy or anything like that, you know, but there's also this book that I thought I would show you guys. This book is called The Color Mixing Bible, so you guys can see it. It was created by Ian Sidaway, I think. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And right now you can get it for fairly cheap. I think there was a website, I just Googled it, called Alibris, A-L-I-B-R-I-S, where they've got it brand new for $9.73 plus $3.99 shipping. Anyhow, in this book, it has a couple of different very helpful sections. Let's see. You've got color science, or the science of color, color theory, pigments, help choosing a palette, color mixing, and then you've got all these different sections broken down, like acrylic, watercolor, gouache, oils, soft pastel, pencils or ink, mixing whites, and subject mixes. So I'm just going to open a couple pages here and show you an example or two, because, you know, you're probably not going to want to create a color chart for every single thing that you do, because it can take some time, especially depending on how many different colors you have. So this book is a helpful thing you can just quickly go to. Let's see, oils. Let's see if I can get something where you can see the paint a little bit better. Okay, so the section on acrylics. It starts right here, where you've got all of your different reds and colors. So it's basically like a color chart that somebody made and put in a book. You've got cadmium red light, cadmium red medium, vermilion, naphthol crimson, quinacridone red, scarlet red. And then going this way, we've got alizarin crimson, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow light, cadmium yellow medium, viridian, ultramarine, cerulean blue, permanent violet, raw umber, Payne's gray, and ivory black. So this is something that's helpful to have. That's just a quick go-to if you need to look something up, because the colors interact a little differently between oils and acrylics or soft pastels when you're mixing colors, But I created a color chart for the gouache paints I got because I got colors that weren't listed in this book. But in any case, it's a pretty helpful book. It's a thing you can just quickly turn to. It doesn't cost that much. I would still encourage you, though, to make color charts, especially if you're doing for different mediums, because, for example, if you're working with acrylics, then we know acrylic paint, all your colors pretty much, they dry darker. Well, with gouache paint, it's different. With gouache paint, your light colors dry darker and your dark colors dry lighter. This is, frustrating because if you've mixed a paint color and you paint something and it dries and you're like, oh, that's not the right color, it's too dark, it's too light, I need to mix it again. Again, that's why it's a great idea to have a color chart. And one last thing, talking about Lightfast Ratings real quick. I would strongly encourage you to do your research on the colors and everything before you order anything. I'm not affiliated with them, but dickblick.com, that's a great website to get great quality artist supplies. And there's a lot of companies that put out sets of colors, whether it be watercolor, gouache, oil paint, whatever. Well, if you look into the quality or the colors of the paints, you can go online and just type in, for example, if I'm doing Winsor Newton watercolors. So I could go online and type in Winsor Newton watercolor chart. And there should be a chart that you can find that has all of the colors and that will have the Lightfast ratings listed along with them. If there is a company that does not have Lightfast ratings listed, do not buy them, because those colors will more than likely fade and they will just, like I said, if you're selling your work, give you a bad reputation, or be frustrating if you come back like in a year or two and you look at your painting and your colors are just faded and they're not the same, unless, you know, you're just wanting to pick up something cheap just to start with so you're not wasting all that money. You know, but then the flip side of it too is you'd be better off starting with just a limited color palette with high grade materials, because those materials are going to act differently than the ones that, you know, are just on a shelf at Walmart somewhere. They're going to mix differently. I mean, you will just notice the difference. It can be really frustrating to use watercolors or acrylics that aren't really artist quality, because, you know, they might not want to mix well, or they just might not be very opaque, or they'll be too runny. You really get what you're paying for. But going back to speaking with the sets, like the color sets, like watercolors, you know, you can buy a set of watercolors that comes in pans, or buy the tubes. And some of those, they can get pretty pricey, and not all of those colors will have the best Lightfast ratings. So, you know, again, I encourage you, look up your the company that you're thinking of getting the paints from. You know, you can do some cross-referencing research to see how much your, you know, whatever you're thinking about costs. Read reviews online, see what artists have had experience with it. It will really save you from having buyer's remorse. And you'll probably be better off, because if you're already spending a decent, you know, a pretty good chunk of money on materials that are artist grade, you don't want to end up, you know, shelling out, I don't know, like 70 or 80 bucks or 90 or however much you're going to spend, and you buy a set of colors, and then there's, you know, colors in your set that aren't even rated for light fastness, or they're, you know, rated a 3 or a 4, which is about as bad as you can, you know. 3 and below you want to avoid. You always want to get, if you're going ATSDM color fast ratings, you want to get ratings 1 and 2. If you're doing blue wool scale, you want to get ratings 7, 8, maybe a 6. You want to avoid going any lower than that if you're worried about the preservation of your work and your colors. So it's good to look that up, because, you know, you'd be better off just buying everything in single tubes, or however you're going to do it, than shelling out all this money and, I don't know, spending money for something in a set that you might just want to replace and buy open stock anyways, because the Lightfast ratings aren't that great. Anyhow, I know I've rambled on for quite a bit, and I hope this information was helpful. And you know, you can find me on Facebook, Facebook.com/EchoArtHouse. Come follow me on my page if there's anything you'd like to see in a video, or, you know, questions you have, or, you know, I don't know, something you might want to talk about, or I don't know, whatever. You know, just follow me on YouTube. I'm just finally getting to the point where I can start putting out some more videos and things. And I'll see you later. No, wait. Hey guys, how's it going? What? How's it going? No. Or, you know, not just that, but if you spent hours and hours on a painting, you don't... Mom, I'm recording a video. Can I call you back, please?